For 20 years, East Alabama's sports talk leader.
Swing and drive. Mountain right.
Sportscall.
Oh, what a dunk.
Call in now at 887-3401 locally. Or 1-888-9-TIGER-9 toll free.
Struck him out.
And now, coming to you live from the loveliest village on the plains. Sportscall.
Good Thursday afternoon, everyone. Welcome into the latest edition of Sports Call. I am Andy Graham. I do know what day it is. It is Thursday, and I'm joined by Randy Lee. We'll be with you for until 5 o'clock, and then when he'll step aside, and I'll be joined by our good friend Scott Hardy for the second hour of Sports Call today. We'll be discussing everything relevant in the world of sports, but we'd love to hear from you. We'd love to hear what direction you'd like us to go. So give us a topic that you'd like to talk about. Give us a call at 1-888-9-TIGER-9 toll free, or locally at 334-887-3401 on the AO Tourism hotline. We appreciate all of you out there joining us this Thursday afternoon. We'd love to hear from you. Give us a call. Let us know what's on your mind. A lot to talk about today, as there is every day, it seems like, in the world of sports. There's always something going on. Of course, we'll continue to break down the Oregon-Ohio State game for the first ever college football playoff championship game. That'll be Monday night. We'll continue. We kind of danced around it a little bit, talked a little bit about it, but we'll continue to break that down pretty specifically here in the next couple of days. We can talk about the NFL playoffs. They're going on this weekend. Some interesting things going on. Aaron Rodgers now, it's reported that he has a tear in his calf. It's not only severely strained, but has a small tear in there as well. So Dallas, perfect on the road this year, heading to Green Bay. A lot of good storylines going on in the NFL. It was rumored today, earlier in the day, that Auburn High School coach Tim Carter might be out at Auburn High School. It looks now maybe that was erroneous. That is not the case, at least as far as we know so far. If you'd like to talk about that, you have any information about that, where that came from, or should he remain at Auburn High School? If you have an opinion about that, let us know. 1-888-9-TIGER-9 toll free locally at 334-887-3401 on the Auburn Opelika Tourism hotline. Our question of the day is kind of going to revolve around the NFL draft. Who is going to be the first player taken? Jameis Winston and Marcus Mariota, of course. Looks like they are two of the highest prospects out there. And the question of the day is, who would you take? Jameis Winston or Marcus Mariota? Of course, both high-profile quarterbacks playing for high-profile teams, both Heisman Trophy winners. Totally different, though, when it comes to off-the-field issues. Brian Matthews will join us at 5:30. We'll pick his brain about everything going on in Auburn Athletics. But, the NFL draft, a lot of Auburn players coming out this year in the NFL draft.
Yeah, a little more than normal, and a couple of those look to have the potential of being high draft picks. I guess the top two that you would point to, Reese Dismukes, Sammy Coates, potentially second, third round picks. If you look at some of the draft grades out there, also Nick Marshall, he's going to be drafted. Just where will he come in? Maybe that's a question of the day also. Which one of those three? And if you got another one from Auburn you think may be drafted, call in with those. Who do you think will be drafted first? And your expectation level as they move into the NFL and start their career there. 888-9-TIGER-9, 334-887-3401. I want to throw something your way here, though. Thank the good Lord above that you or I or nobody around here has to, as we were 14 degrees this morning when we head into our car heading to work. They'll be playing this weekend at Green Bay. The Cowboys in Green Bay around 20-degree weather. How do you perform your best in that? And I'm sorry, everyone call in and say, well, that's what football was built around, and, that it's at Lambeau Field, and they played in the Ice Bowl and these things before, and it was minus 20-degree weather. Fine, I get it, but how do you prove who's best when you're out there and everybody's miserable? And I don't see how you can't be miserable and play in 20-degree weather. Am I off a little bit there, Andy?
Well, when it comes down to old-fashioned, and I believe this is the first time Dallas has traveled to Green Bay for a playoff game since the Ice Bowl. So that's an interesting tidbit there. But I think when it comes down, football always comes back to physicality and, machismo and who's the bigger man. And I think that's part of it. You know, and when you get in a game like that, who's the better man? Who's the meaner guy? Who's willing to do? Who's the tougher guy? Now, it kind of diminishes, I think, some of the skill that's come to be what football is all about. You know, you take away maybe some of, the passing game of an Aaron Rodgers. Of course, he's injured, and certainly the cold. Maybe the cold will do him good. Maybe it'll numb his leg like it did in Ndamukong Suh's feet. You know, it'll numb them so he can't feel. So I'm not sure one way or the other.
Let's go back to the phone lines. Michael, you're on Sports Call.
Hey, guys, I appreciate y'all getting me in. It just picking y'all up. Had a couple of things I wanted to try to throw out there if y'all allow me some time. And just real quick on the targets that Auburn's still targeting to try to get in. I think the Martez Abbey, I think we got a really good shot at getting him on the offensive line and hope to maybe shore up some defensive line prospects once we get them in from the, official visits. I hope that Muschamp can do that. Do y'all think the 4-3, can you kind of give a projection of who you think maybe, linebackers or how they'll move those to outside, who's going to be inside next year, or maybe just a quick kind of synopsis of who you think the starting lineman will be on offense. I know the transfer from Ole Miss would be moving to center to replace Reese. I've heard that. And then if we did get Martez Abbey, how does that shake things up? Would he get immediately playing time? Can y'all touch base on that? And then I just had a quick question. With the Hall of Fame with baseball, I know there's a lot of baseball guys out there that have been, that have been left off that they talk about being a miss, but I don't hear it as much as NFL. Is there any NFL guys that y'all know of that have maybe been left off that NFL Hall of Fame that you guys would like to see in there that y'all know of? Is that a topic that y'all may know more about than I do? I just don't know of any guys that are maybe on that bubble, like I say, Pete Rose in baseball, that maybe y'all could kind of touch base on, and I'll listen to y'all. I appreciate it.
Michael, two great questions. We'll try to get to both of those. I want to start right there. Again, just my opinion when you're talking about the 4-3 defense. I think Trey Williams, seeing him play in high school and seeing the way that he defended passes and he works in the passing game, I think that someone standing in the middle and how important they are in the passing game. Watch Keegley play for Carolina. He's great in the run game, but watch him in the passing game. Watch how quickly he deciphers what's going on behind him and around him and how quickly he gets the receiver down to the ground once a reception is made. I always thought one of the things that Ray Lewis did exceptionally well was in pass defense. How many times he was able to get his hands on balls in the middle of the field. And I know that's a lot with that Tampa 2 defense and the moving around that you see with that, but the middle linebacker is so important in getting his hands in the middle of the passing game and disrupting that. So I really do believe Trey Williams is ideal for that. He's a tall, long guy. And from seeing him sideline to sideline defend some wide passes, he feels like the perfect fit to me there, Andy.
Yeah, I mean, Chris Frost announced today he's coming back as well. So Casanova McKenzie and Chris Frost back, Trey Williams stepping up. Deshaun Davis redshirted last year. A guy that, nobody's ever heard from again is Cam Toney. Cameron Toney comes in, with some promise, and I hadn't heard his name at all. But I would expect to see those three guys, like and Trey Williams. It'll be interesting to see. Casanova McKenzie played the middle linebacker position this year. It'll be interesting to see. It's hard to project. And I think you maybe have brought this up not too long ago. When you look at the Florida defense, they were in the nickel package the majority of the time last year. It seemed like playing, and I think you probably have to do that so much this day and age playing spread offenses. So it made the scheme itself may not look a whole lot different than it did this year, in that Auburn probably will play in the nickel package a lot more than maybe you would normally see out of the 4-3. So it's just kind of the day and time that it is. So you may end up with two linebackers on the field instead of three anyway.
If you've got a comment on that, if you've got something you'd like to bring or question us on, 888-9-TIGER-9, 334-887-3401. Our question of the day today, between Jameis Winston and Mariota, who would you draft first in the NFL draft? We'll be able to talk a lot more about that one. Also, Auburn players that look to be in the NFL draft, who do you expect to be drafted at the top? You said Sammy Coates, Andy.
Yeah, I think so. I think he's going to be one of those guys that just wows everybody. at the combine. I think his measurables, his tangibles are just so off the chart. Everybody, he's voted one of the biggest freaks in college football, and everybody seems, it happens every year. You get to the combines, and these players just wow everybody. Greg Robinson did that this past year, and so I expect Sammy Coates' stock only to rise. And every coach is going to look at the drops that he had in college football, and every one of them is going to say, well, we can coach him up to do, that's not going to be the case when he gets here. So I don't think that's going to be an issue. I expect him probably to sneak into the bottom of the second round.
We had another question there from Michael, and I'll get your fill on this. Is NFL Hall of Famers that just miss out, that you feel like should be in there, but maybe haven't made the cut so far? I'll throw one out there, and I'd like to get your feel on it. And I know our good friend Anthony Turling over there in the Auburn market will talk about this Steeler legend, Jerome Bettis. Do you feel like Jerome Bettis is a Hall of Famer, or is he right there on the cusp?
I don't see him as a Hall of Famer. I mean, but then again, baseball Hall. He compared it to Baseball Hall of Fame to the NFL Hall of Fame. It's really two different things. I think the Baseball Hall of Fame is the most exclusive of any sports Hall of Fame, and I think there's a reason for that, and that's because it's all about numbers and then things like that. Jerome Bettis has great numbers, but I don't ever think. I mean, was there ever a time in his career that you thought, man, he's the best running back in the NFL?
I thought a few years, yeah. I did. I thought that he was one of the best, and I thought he got some years. I don't know where I thought he was the absolute best in the league, but I thought when it came down to crunch time, he was one you didn't mind having his hands. In those last couple of years, he played for the Steelers, including that last one, and the run that he went on. I think that's got to go as part of your legacy. And look, these votes tend to revolve around your legacy. I mean, they revolve around whether you got over the hump and you won Super Bowls, or if you're Tony Romo and you were unable to get a playoff win that he got over the hump this past week, that was going to go into a lot of the talk with him. So I think Bettis getting over the hump and winning that championship's got to at least help him, I think.
I guess it could. I look at players and I think when we talk about the Hall of Fame, you have to look at them and say, did they do something spectacular? I mean, their numbers are just so spectacular. One of the arguments against, or I've heard about Craig Biggio, so that nobody ever looked at him and said, man, he's the best second baseman. But he has 3,000 hits. That's a magic number in baseball. And that's what baseball's about, is numbers. So that gets you in. If you're, top 5 all-time rushing yards, I'm not sure where Bettis falls in that category. He's pretty high, though, if I recall. But I just never looked at him, and I wouldn't even – I mean, maybe I'm just remembering and my memory's failing me, but I never looked at him and thought he would even have been in the top 3 in any given year that I would have said he was the best running back.
Let me throw one that was the best running back for 2 years, but had a very, very short career, and it's going to be debated, and we'll see if he gets in. Terrell Davis. You think he deserves to be in the Hall?
That's a good question. Longevity is part of it as well. You have to balance that out. It's not just about being great, but it's about you have to have some longevity. I mean, Bo Jackson was the best running back for a couple of years, and he played football as a hobby. But that doesn't mean he belongs in the Hall of Fame, because he was injured, and that's what it is. So I would say no on Terrell Davis as well. I think a Hall of Fame needs to be an exclusive club, and I think if you start letting everybody in, it just kind of gets watered down.
Great call, great question from Michael right there. We'll continue to pass that one along with a couple of other questions that we have out there. NFL Hall of Famers that haven't made the cut so far, that you feel like you watched, you saw, you've seen highlight films on, maybe from past players, that you feel like need to get into the Hall. If you've got a comment on that, we'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, we'll touch base when we come back about some of the recruiting class that Michael brought up. Martez Ivy and some of the guys at Auburn is still looking at who they have a chance at. The January 16th, remember that date. That's going to be an enormous weekend on the Plains. So many guys coming in, so many high-level guys coming in. That could change this class from a good class to a great class. So we'll have to wait and see how that all comes out. Sports Call today is brought to you by Always Money. Always Money offers title loans, cash advance loans, Western Union services, and they buy your gold. Visit one of their many convenient locations or visit them on the web at alwaysmoney.com. Always Money, easy, convenient, friendly, and fast. When we come back, we'll discuss these things and take your phone calls. 1-888-9-TIGER-9 toll free, or locally at 334-887-3401 on the Auburn Opelika Tourism Hotline. More Sports Call presented by Always Money right after this.
When it can be done for you, visit exclusivecruiseplanners.com or call 844-722-6342.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Thursday edition of Sports Call. Andy and Randy here with you until 6 o'clock, taking your phone calls at 1-888-9-TIGER-9 toll-free or locally at 334-887-3401 on the Auburn Opelika Tourism Hotline. Sports Call today is also brought to you by Auburn Urgent Care. Auburn Urgent Care offers convenient solutions for your health care and occupational medicine needs, including workman's compensation injury care and certified DOT medical examinations. With locations on South College and in Tigertown, visit them online at auburnurgentcare.com. Another thing that I didn't bring up in the first segment, but it has made a lot of news, and we'll talk about this as the show progresses, but the Johnny Taylor admission to Alabama from that's kind of blown up and kind of shed some light on the hypocrisy, really, that is college football, or the college football fan bases, I guess, maybe is what it is. But college football in general, about rehabilitating young men, and when it's time to kick one off, and when another program just welcome them with open arms is what I'm trying to say. Interesting topic, but nonetheless, we were talking about pro Hall of Famers that are guys that maybe should be in the NFL Hall of Fame. That was the question that was brought up. You had another list of some more guys.
Well, I had a couple of more. Let me go back to one real quick. And Michael brought this question up, and Pro Football Hall of Famers that haven't made it into the Hall that you think should. We brought up Jerome Bettis, and so I'd like to throw a couple of things out there. So you said you didn't know if he was a top running back in the league. Well, he was a two-time first-team All-Pro in 93 and 96. He's a six-time Pro Bowl winner, did second-team All-Pro in 1 year. So he had 3 years where he was first or second team. So you one of the top 4 running backs in the league those 3 years. Walter Payton Man of the Year back in 2001. That's got to go somewhere. He had 13,662 yards, 94 touchdowns, won a Super Bowl. Those type of stats do get you in between. And those are the fun ones. Those are the Craig Biggios of the world in MLB. Moving over to a couple of more that we came up with, and if you've got some names that you'd like to throw into this list, we'd love to hear from you. Tony Dungy, think he deserves to be in?
I think he's a tweener too. He was a decent player. He was a very good coach. He won a Super Bowl, but he had Peyton Manning. I think Peyton Manning won a Super Bowl. He built Tampa Bay. Of course, they handed it over to John Gruden. He won a Super Bowl. That was kind of the knock on Tony Dungy. He couldn't win a Super Bowl. So I think he's an excellent guy. He's the kind of guy you want in the NFL Hall of Fame, really. But I don't know. I think he's kind of a borderline. I don't know. I wouldn't put him in there as a coach, to be quite honest.
Morton Anderson.
Definitely. Why? I mean, the guy kicked till he was 50. He's got to be almost – I don't know. I don't have the numbers in front of him, but he's got to be high on the all-time scoring list.
I would think so, too. And he was the best of his generation.
Absolutely. No doubt about it.
So, and if you're the best of your generation, and I don't care if you're a kicker or what you are, a punter, to me, I know that Ray Guy finally made it in as the first punter and very deservingly so. But if you're exceptional, I mean, look how much of a difference, honestly. You watched last year with Auburn's football team, watch this year. Hopefully Auburn does a great job of filtering in a kicker and a punter in 4-year intervals. So I really do expect us to just get better and better. We always seem to do that. But watch Alabama this year. That freak of nature that they got over there punting the football is one of the best I've seen since Terry Daniels, or a couple of those that I can throw out there that kick for Auburn.
Just a freshman.
And just a freshman. He's unbelievable. And Morton Anderson kicking the ball was much like that. We'll close out this topic. Marvin Harrison.
Absolutely, definitely. I thought he was, yes, Peyton Manning was throwing him the ball, but I think they helped each other. He was kind of his Rice. To Joe Montana. So definitely, I think Marvin Harrison belongs there.
888-9 Tiger 9 334-887-3401. I didn't get your feel yesterday. We'll go back to it because I'm sure there's a lot of Auburn fans to call in and still have a comment on this. Your thoughts about the Auburn game against Vandy the other night?
Oh, I thought it was. I was impressed with the fact that Auburn didn't quit. I was impressed that they came back after a 14-point deficit at the half to cut it to 5, and maybe even could have gotten. If you get a call, one way or the other, on that charge, maybe it goes as a block. Auburn, maybe even could have won that game. They do not play well there in Memorial for whatever reason. They just haven't played well in quite a long time. But Auburn's just not a great team. We've got to find some way to get Antoine Mason and KT Harrell on the same, get them both hot at the same time. Auburn has to those two guys, if they're not scoring, it can't be either or, because Auburn just can't compete. They can't score enough. They don't have enough else, filtered throughout the lineup. So those two guys have both got to be on their games and scoring and pumping in 18 to 20 a night. And then you get what you get out of Simeon Bowers. You get, the development, hopefully, of Trayvon Reed, and maybe he becomes a force on the defensive end, at least blocking shots and rebounding. And then, Malcolm Canada and does what he does, and KC Ross Miller can continue to play and lead the league in steals right now, I think. So, but until both of those guys get on the same page at the same time, and it's not either or about scoring, Auburn's, it's going to be a struggle.
888-9 Tiger 9 334-887-3401. Shooting was abysmal, to say the least. Auburn 30% from the field, 33% behind the arc, 50% from the free throw line. What do you point that to? I don't know. It can't be a 10-year jinx, and that's what it feels like as an Auburn fan, that it's
20.
a 10-year jinx. Brett and I were laughing with a good friend of ours, Mark Worthy, the other night when we were tweeting around. It's got to be a 10-year jinx on the free throw. There's got to be a cap on that thing somewhere, because these basketball players are just much better than they show once they get to Auburn and start shooting the ball.
I mean, you can sit them at the line, after practice and tell them to shoot 500 after every practice. And I mean, you would think they would get better. I'm not sure if you do that, you probably don't have the time to do it, because there's so much. You only have so much practice time. You can only dedicate so much time to it. But it's not that hard. I mean, I used to think that I could probably stand up there and throw it backwards and hit as many as some of these guys do. So I don't understand it. I know these big guys. I understand maybe they have that because their form is all, and it's just being that tall is a lanky existence. But for these other guys, I don't get it. I don't know why they can't hit a 10-foot shot. Doesn't make any sense to me.
Our question of the day: Jameis Winston, Marcus Mariota. Who do you take first in the NFL draft? Let's close out this segment. Your thoughts again.
I hate to say it, but I probably, if I was an NFL GM, I would probably draft Winston, because I think he's that prototypical. And I just watched him throw the ball, and there's a phrase in the NFL that they use. He can throw a guy open. That's what he does. He does not throw to a receiver. He throws to a spot, and the receiver gets there. And it's a beautiful thing to watch. All the off the field stuff is a huge consideration, and it's a huge problem. But right now, and I think Marcus Mariota is a great guy, and I think he's a great quarterback, and I think he'll be around in the NFL. I don't know if he'll succeed greatly, but I think he'll succeed, as much as any of these rest of these guys do. But I don't know. You just look at Winston, the body and the arm and the accuracy. He's if it's not about anything else but on the field, I think you take him.
888-9 Tiger 9 334-887-3401.
Up against a break, but when we come back, we'll continue to take your phone calls and continue to talk about everything going on. We'll talk a little bit about Oregon versus Ohio State. More Sports Call presented by Auburn Urgent Care right after this.
To a one-of-a-kind Dr. Pepper.
He had 20
Dr. Pepper
rushes.
is a proud sponsor of the College Football Playoff. Dr. Pepper, always one of a kind.
Welcome back, everyone, to Sports Call on this Thursday afternoon. Andy and Randy here with you for another hour and a half, taking your phone calls at 1-888-9-TIGER-9 toll-free, or locally at 334-887-3401 on the AO Tourism Hotline. Love to know what's on your mind today. Love to get your comments or any of your thoughts on any of the topics that we've discussed so far. We were talking in the break about who we would take first. I said, unfortunately, I would take Winston first. And Randy, you said the same thing.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you. When you look at the NFL game right now, outside of a couple of guys each year, a Russell Wilson, a Kaepernick that has had his moments, it's a pocket passing game. And those that miss most often are the ones we get eye-dropping statistics from in college, and it could be a system play. Now, I watch Marcus Mariota and his frame, and he has put on a little weight, but he is a slender frame. If you're watching him throw the football, it's okay. It's not anything it's definitely not Jameis Winston type when you see him throw the football around. And so I just think that Winston, if you can keep him on the straight and narrow, which could be, and you can keep him out of trouble or things from the past not coming back up, that he's about as close to a can't miss as an NFL quarterback as we've seen in a while. I think coming out, throwing the football, am I off there?
No, I think you're about right. We'd love to hear from you. Who would you take first in the NFL draft? Tampa Bay Buccaneers have the number 1 pick. Tennessee Titans have the number 2 pick. Both those teams looking for a quarterback. Who goes first? Who would you take, Marcus Mariota or Jameis Winston? And I brought this point up to you. And, we think about, and Nick Marshall was an explosive. He was a productive. He was an impact player. There's no question about it for Auburn the last 2 years. He accounted for 57 touchdowns at Auburn in the last 2 years. Marcus Mariota has accounted for 55 touchdowns this season. He has thrown for 4,000 yards. He has 30 touchdowns and 3 interceptions. 40 touchdowns and 3 interceptions. There has to be something said for that kind of production. It is a lot about the system, but 40 touchdowns, 3 picks. That's just, obviously he's a lot more accurate than a lot of people give him credit for.
Good points. 888-9-TIGER-9, 334-887-3401. And this is a good transfer into our next topic, and that's this championship game. And we just talked about that during the break. Andy, just as we start in, who you like going in?
Well, I like Oregon going in, but I'm trying to talk myself into believing Ohio State because I've watched that, and I don't read anything into this, but I've watched the Sugar Bowl about twice since it was played, the replays of it, and I'm not getting tired of it. But that not being here nor there, you watch. It's hard, and you look at the statistics, and you can't really make a lot of the offensive statistics for Ohio State because it's Cardale Jones. He's a different guy. It's not J.T. Parrott that's putting up these stats now. So it's a little bit misleading, when you look at the stats. But, Ohio State's defense, can they slow down? Can you just get Oregon off their rhythm? If Arizona can do it, certainly Ohio State can do it. So I was really unprepared for the way that Ohio State ran the ball against Alabama. I just didn't think they'd be able to do it like that. However, they did do it. So that gives me – and I watched Florida State run the ball better against Oregon than anybody that I'd seen do it, besides Georgia Tech, which is, that's kind of a different story. So I fully believe Ohio State will be able to score the football. And I believe this could very easily be a game that just comes down to whoever's got the ball last.
These two stats and the stat lines offensively for both of these teams are eye-opening. 510 yards of offense for Ohio State to 552 yards of offense for Oregon.
And that's third in the country.
Do you think there's any chance? And I remember going back to Auburn's national championship game against Oregon in 2010, and we all sitting up here and talking and saying there is no chance whatsoever this is not going to be a race. Who's going to outscore the other? It's got to get into the 40s, and who's got the ball last go win. And then it's 22-19, and it was it was a defensive game, I thought, for the most part, outside of a couple of big plays on both ends. And is there any part of you that feels like that could be the play here in this football game?
Well, here's the big difference between that game and this one, in which I love, and this is what's great about the playoff. You don't take a 40-day layoff and come in rusty as all get out. You just played 12 days ago. So that's one thing I don't think you're going to see that. I think both teams are going to be at their best. It's indoors. Weather is not going to be a factor. It's not going to be 6 degrees. It's going to be a balmy, probably 70 degrees in AT&T Stadium. And, everything will be – I think it's going to be both teams at their best. I really do. I think for the first time in a long, long time, we're actually going to see – I mean, think back to that Oklahoma-Florida State game. What did it end up, like 13-2? Or so, I mean, it was one of those odds. I mean, it was just both teams – that 40-day layoff always just – to me, that was as much as effective as weather could have been on the both teams. I hated that, and I'm glad that it's gone.
And, another shocking stat as we're continuing down the stat line for the Oregon and Ohio State game were both defenses giving up points. A very respectable 26th in the country for Ohio State at 22 points per game and 22 points per game at 27th in the country for Oregon. So maybe, and, I said that watching that Wisconsin game against Ohio State, I didn't realize, because we don't get to watch them day in and day out, but the secondary for Ohio State, they're physical, they match up, they can run with anybody. If anyone can match up and keep this spacing problem that is the Oregon offense, you said, how do you go for 40 touchdown passes, only 3 interceptions? You throw to a wide-open receiver 80% of the time. And when I watch Oregon play, that's what it looks like. It's not like he's threading the needle down the middle of the field that we saw Jameis Winston have to do at Florida State all these years.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point as well. And again, you look at the offensive numbers for Ohio State, and they're a little misleading because, again, it is a different quarterback. But pass efficiency, the number 1 pass efficiency offense in the country, that being Oregon, versus the number 2 pass efficiency offense in the country, that being Ohio State. So that both of them, not only throw the ball and for a lot of yards, they do it very effectively. They do it very efficiently. They're both wonderful on third down. The number 3 third down conversion team, best conversion in the country, versus the number 4 best conversion. So both offenses can move the ball. They're very efficient. The only number that really jumps out at you is kind of a big discrepancy, pass yards allowed. Oregon 108th in the country, giving up passing yards. Ohio State only 16th in the country. So maybe the pass defense, rises up and slows Oregon down enough because they rely on that. Oregon, of course, they do everything at warp speed. So that's kind of the equalizer in all this, of course. And can you just get them off their rhythm? I think that's one of the biggest things. They always talk about the spread, and they relate it to basketball. Well, getting a team out of their rhythm, making them do uncomfortable things that they do, that's what you have to do with Oregon.
888-9-TIGER-9, 334-887-3401. The wild card in this that maybe they don't get talked about near as much as the quarterback play for both of these teams, or these 2 running backs. They're outstanding. Ezekiel Elliott, he is a game breaker at 1,600-plus yards this season for Ohio State. When he gets in the open field, you can go ahead and cancel it out. I saw him looking up at the monitor there as he was outrunning everybody for Alabama to the end zone, and we've seen him do that a couple of straight weeks. It seems like the floodgates open up in the middle of the field, and there goes Elliott, number 15, down the center of it. We saw him do it against Wisconsin. And Royce Freeman, 1,450 yards rushing, only a freshman, almost 6 yards per carry, 18 touchdowns a game for Oregon. Just huge numbers right there. So I think that those 2 players are the wild card, Andy.
I think you're right. And you look down through these things, through these players, and what the thing that jumps out at me, I look down through Oregon's numbers. Marcus Mariota, who's going to go to the NFL, there's no doubt about it, but a junior. I look at Royce Freeman, freshman. Thomas Tyner, who had a great game against Florida State, sophomore. Byron, the leading receiver, junior. The other receivers, freshman. Look across at Ohio State, Cardell Jones, sophomore. Elliott, sophomore. Their leading receiver is a senior, but their other 2, sophomore, freshman. These 2 teams are young. This is young talent we're going to see on the field. Probably, and it seems like every time you watch Oregon play, there's a freshman running wild and everybody's talking about how he's going to be a Heisman candidate next year. How is it that Oregon never seems to be in the top 10 in recruiting, yet always looks like one of the most talented teams on the field?
Well, it's speed, and I think they recruit to a certain type of player that maybe doesn't fit the docket of a 6'1", 215-pound bruising running back. They don't always have to have that guy to make it. LaMichael James definitely wasn't. He was probably 175, 180-pound guy coming out of high school, and I'm sure he was a high recruit, but nobody expected him to probably pull off exactly what he did once he got to Oregon. He was a game breaker right there. I want to close out this segment, bring up I heard y'all talk a lot about the Auburn defense yesterday, and we'll close it out saying here because we're looking at two dynamic offenses with a lot of young players. Part of Auburn's defense, if you're sitting there and you're talking, has got to be shored up quickest and the earliest for us to be in competition for a game like this next year.
Oh, boy. It all has to get better. I mean, that's just all 11 spots have to get better next year. But I think you have to go to the defensive line. I think their play. I mean, I would say linebacker, but I think it's, you would say front seven, but if you're talking about three different positions, or really, I guess, four maybe, if you want to separate safety and cornerback. But the defensive line, they can make so much difference. Auburn had 22 interceptions this year. That led the SEC. That was tied for the tops in the SEC. Imagine what they could have done if there would have actually been some pressure on the quarterback. Auburn only had 20 sacks. That was near the bottom of the SEC. So pressure on the quarterback, being able to contain it. I mean, the thing that's going to stick out to you, of course, is getting up 400 yards on the ground. That starts with a defensive line, holding your blocks, not being, and getting some penetration right off the bat and forcing the running back to commit to a hole where the linebacker hopefully is going to be there to fill that hole. But to me, that's where you need to see the biggest difference, I guess, is defensive line, although it all needs to be different. I'm
going to totally agree with you, and I'll say back to the 2010 season where Auburn had an opportunity to win a national championship and came through by stopping a dynamic Oregon offense, and the reason they were able to do that is they controlled the line of scrimmage, and they could the majority of the year that year. We were outstanding in run defense that year. We didn't have a good defense because we had one of the worst secondaries, and seriously, you can look at the stats, probably stat-wise, maybe the worst year in Auburn history in pass defense. I'd have to pull it back up. I know the numbers ended up being really bad when you look at overall stats, but the rush defense was one of the tops in the SEC and definitely one of the tops in the country. So just being able to at least do one thing, stopping one thing, and we could hang our hat on being physical up front and stopping that run. I'd love to just get back to that point. If we're trying to make gradual increases to getting back to a dynamic defense that we all grew up and loved, then that would be the place I would start also. Up against a break, Andy.
Yeah, up against a break here, but don't go anywhere. More Sports Call presented by Always Money right after this.
100% natural spring water with naturally occurring electrolytes that support a lifestyle of well-being. When you need to refresh, revitalize, and replenish, it's always Resource Natural Spring Water.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Thursday edition of Sports Call. Andy and Randy here with you for one more segment. Then Randy will step aside, and I'll be joined by Scott Hardy, hopefully, and we'll continue on with the hour number 2 of Sports Call. We're here taking your phone calls at 1-888-9-TIGER-9 toll free, or locally at 334-887-3401 on the AO Tourism Hotline. We'd like to know what you think. Who would you draft, Jameis Winston or Marcus Mariota? Do the off-the-field problems outweigh Jameis Winston's obvious talent on the field? Of course, you think you get vetted when you go to a job interview. The NFL will do their due diligence. There's no doubt about it. They'll talk to every single person that's ever been involved or anything about it, and they'll end up making their own minds. But I know Brett's worried about Tampa Bay because he's a Tampa Bay fan. Them taking Jameis Winston. The mock draft, the first one I saw had Mariota going number 1. It'll be interesting to see if that changes. And of course, a lot of time now between now and the NFL draft, so that's subject to change.
Let's just say I'll be shocked. I really would be. I mean, maybe Mariota goes and he shines, and all of the glamour that has been built around him, and deservedly so, is for real, because the combine won't lie. I mean, when he's out there and he's having to make every pass that they need to be made in the NFL, I don't think it'll lie. But again, it's back to his frame that really concerned me, just the thin guy and kind of an A.J. McCarron type of body. He's a lot faster, of course. He can move around better, but I don't think that makes that much of a difference. Michael Vick's about the only quarterback that I can remember that he had such tremendous speed that he could get away and make some plays. But you look at Cam Newton, who had 1,400 yards rushing in the SEC, 20 touchdowns, unbelievable. Now he has been – I know he's got some injuries, but the injuries are built around what you're having to take on each and every week in the NFL. And what's he averaging? Maybe 30, 40 yards per game running the football. RG3 is as dynamic an athlete as we've seen go in. He gets hurt every year. The running game, I mean, they've had to change the offense totally around. Vince Young went in. He could do a little bit of everything. No, that didn't do any good. Johnny Manziel looks about as bad as you can make one look the first couple of times he's been on the field. So it's just a totally different ball game, Andy. It
is. You have to be the athletic. You have to use that part of the running game that you used in college, like a Russell Wilson, like an Aaron Rodgers. You use it to escape the pocket, to get yourself some more time, to buy yourself some time to make the throws downfield. You take off every now and then, and you slide and you don't get hit. You don't ever see Russell Wilson hardly or Aaron Rodgers ever take a hit. So that's how you use that. And I could see Marcus Mariota using that kind of like an Aaron Rodgers. I think he's got this kind of feet like that. I just don't know if he's got the accuracy or the arm strength that Aaron Rodgers does. The NFL came out today, is deemed to have never previously seen the Ray Rice in-elevator video, according to the findings of the independent investigation led by Robert Mueller. They said they didn't find any evidence. There was, of course, this report that the video was sent, and a woman's voice said that they'd seen it, but no evidence to that that's actually happened. Whether it did or not, well, does this mean anything to you?
I believe they saw something. I think that it's again being hidden, but it doesn't mean anything to me. I mean, what do I have to do with it? I mean, not really. I don't know how many of you out there feel the way I do. I mean, but I'm really to the point.
Past it, right?
I'm past it. I think it's horrendous what he did. I think everybody would agree with that, but it happens a lot, and it's not only with Ray Rice. And I do think the NFL needs to step up and needs to take the integrity that it takes to say we're not going to allow this to happen. If it happens again, buddy, good luck. You're not getting back in the league. And they do need to put a stance down on that, but they didn't do that. They tried their best to kind of push this one aside and hope everybody quit talking about it. But it was the media that did a great job of keeping this in the limelight. So when you go back to about the NFL's side of this, I still don't think a lot of them. I still think I think about a whole bunch of CEOs. I mean, they're hypocrites. They're I mean, when you look at some of the problems in some of the larger corporations in the banking system in this country, and you want to point back to one thing that's the problem, it's just sheer unadulterated guys that are trying to take advantage of the system and doing an outstanding job of it. When you look at the salaries that some of these guys and the bonuses that some of these guys take, I'm not surprised that as many problems as we have happened. I mean, did I say something off there, Andy?
No, I think you hit the nail on the head. The report did say that the NFL failed to contact police officers who had investigated the incident, the Atlantic City Prosecutor's Office, and the hotel to obtain the video. They failed to ask Rice or his lawyer if they would make the tape available. They failed to follow up with the Baltimore Ravens to determine if they had any additional information following the league's initial contact with the team. Had problems, but, nothing of substance.
Less than a minute left here in this hour of the program. Quickly back to the phone lines. Johnny, you're on Sportscall.
Hello?
Yeah, Johnny, you there with us?
Yeah, I think on the draft, I think right now, in my opinion, I would go with Winston, but I think it's not really fair to Mariota because I don't think we've seen as much of him. I think Florida State, so many people wanted him to lose. They watched like every game. So, but I do believe he is a very good passer. So I think right now, I would probably go with Winston, but I think the combine, like you just mentioned, I think that would define Mariota. If he can go in there and make all the plays and the throws, I think that could bump him up. So, other thing about huge Packers fans, I'm looking forward to that game this weekend. I think it's going to be 5-6 degrees, so that's going to be a very interesting to see how Dallas can handle that.
Well, hey, we appreciate your phone call. I know we're up against the close, and a great call there, Johnny. We said that leading into the program. Thank the good Lord above. I'm not out there playing in that 5 to 6 degree weather. There's a lot tougher guys out there in this world than me than to want to go out there and deal with that. Andy.
Absolutely, no doubt about it. The Fox Sports Report is coming up next. Randy will not be with me, but Scotty will for hour number 2 of Sports Call right after this.
Director Robert Mueller found that the National Football League did not
By Reinhardt Prattville, located on Cobb's Ford Road, 334-290-1992. Visit us online at ReinhardtPrattville.com. Reinhardt Prattville, we sell to sell again.
You better buckle your seatbelts because it's going to be a show to watch.
From Tiger Communications.
Jackson, touchdown.
For 20 years, East Alabama's sports talk leader.
Swing and drive, Belton right.
Sportscall.
Oh, what a dunk.
Call in now at 887-3401 locally.
Right through, he got
Or 1-888-9-TIGER-9 toll free.
Struck him out.
And now, coming to you live from the loveliest village on the plains, Sports Call.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Sports Call on this Thursday afternoon. Now joined by Scott Hardy. I am Andy Gray. I'm taking your phone calls here at 1-888-9-TIGER-9 toll free or locally at 334-887-3401 on the AO Tourism Hotline. We've had a good show so far, a couple of good calls. I talked a little bit about, of course, the NFL draft. That was our question of the day. Who would you draft, Jameis Winston or Marcus Mariota? It seems like those two are going to be probably the first two picks taken. Tampa Bay Buccaneers have the first pick. Tennessee Titans have the second pick. Both those teams in desperate need of a quarterback. So it'll be interesting to see, how these teams go. Of course, there's a lot of other great players coming out in the draft. It was announced today. Alabama will be losing 3 early enrollees. Amari Cooper, T.J. Yeldon, and Landon Collins are – Landon Collins?
Yes.
All 3 headed to the NFL. Chris Frost announces he's coming back to Auburn. So Auburn only losing Sammy Coates as an early enrollee to the NFL. We'd love to get your thoughts on that. Who would you draft first, Jameis Winston or Marcus Mariota? Does character win out in the end of the day, or do you think Marcus Mariota is a better quarterback than Jameis Winston? Randy and I kind of both agreed that we would reluctantly take Winston just because he just is a prototypical NFL-looking quarterback. He throws the ball with such accuracy. It's hard to get past that with the way that he has played. He certainly plays in a more NFL offense kind of friendly there at Florida State. So, Scott, how you doing today? Thank you for filling in for the show today.
Oh, no, I'm doing great, Andy. I've been listening to you guys during the first hour, so hopefully I can keep it as entertaining as you and Randy were.
Yeah. Well, who would you take? I'll just go ahead and ask you the question of the day. Who would you draft, Jameis Winston or Marcus Mariota?
Well, I think both quarterbacks are both exceptional talents at the college level, but between the two, I think Winston provides you the best ability to build a program build an organization around. I think that Winston could potentially be a Big Ben type, and now that's definitely no comparisons to his off-the-field issues that Big Ben had, but I think from his size and his intangibles and how he handles the pressure, I think he equates to somebody like a Big Ben. But the thing that bothers me a little bit with Winston is the fact that he comes from Jimbo Fisher, somebody who, if you look at some of his products, you got Jamarcus Russell, Christian Ponder, E.J. Manuel, they haven't really produced that much on the NFL level. Now, I think all the talent in the world was possessed by Russell, who had the potential to be really great. But I think Winston has something that a lot of those others didn't, and that was really high football IQ. I think he's highly intelligent, even though he does some stupid things sometimes. I really think he's intelligent. He's got a cannon of an arm, extremely great leader. But his off-the-field issues come into play when you start looking at traditional NFL teams and how they have built their teams. None of your mainstream quarterbacks are guys that get in any trouble. So you have to look at that. And on Mariota's side, I think he's a poor man Kaepernick. I think that Kaepernick is a little better than him, but from an accuracy standpoint, Mariota is a little better. But again, it kind of goes back to him. Is he a product of the Oregon system? Joey Harrington, Mariota, Masole Thomas, those guys were all pro and are all Heisman contenders there, and then they don't really pan out there. So again, I think both are really good, exceptional talents on the college level. But if I was going to build a team around one of the two, it would have to be Winston.
Let us know what you think. Give us a call, 1-888-9-TIGER-9, toll free locally at 334-887-3401. If you're going to draft a guy like a Tennessee Titans or Tampa Bay Buccaneers, you're going to have to – this guy's going to be the face of your franchise. You're basically going to put your future on his shoulders. You're going to bring a guy in and pay him millions of dollars. When do how much of it does it come into play off the field? When you look at a guy like Winston, can he handle that? And the answer is absolutely no. He can. I don't think there's any way he can handle. I mean, this guy acts like he does without being a millionaire. Imagine what you give him means and opportunity. Now, on the other hand, Marcus Mariota, you are taking a risk because he is coming from a system thing, but he seems like a guy that's so mature that he could handle something like that. So how do you balance that? How do you balance what they do on the field and who they are off the field? And how do you? I mean, I guess it's really impossible to kind of project it, but how do you think the NFL, executives balance that kind of thing?
Well, I think part of it goes back to who has his first pick, and it's Tampa Bay, and Lovie Smith is their head coach, and traditionally somebody who hasn't produced a good quarterback. Cutler didn't do that well under him when he was there, so you're looking at it. That's part of it. So I guess if you're going to try to mold one, then you would rather have Winston because there's less likelihood of having to try to build him up more. So he doesn't have to really learn anything from a system-wise. If you get Mariota, he's learning an entire new system. They've been running a pro-style offense at Florida State, but the off-the-field issues do have to come into play to a certain extent, but it's the NFL. We've seen the amount of things that have happened this year and how they've blundered it. The report comes out today that they didn't see the video. So, again, we've seen what they'll do with somebody that they think is an exceptional talent. So if you can help win football games, then I think that they'll, for the most part, dismiss some of the things. Pac-Man Jones has done almost everything you can do, and he's still starting for the Cincinnati Bengals. So I think it's one of those things where if you're an exceptional talent, then they'll find a way for you to be on the field. But, again, there's less development, I think, needed for Winston than it is for Mariota. Yeah,
the bottom line is play on the field. Yeah, and I think Johnny Manziel is a good example of that. If he was a star on the field, people would, the off the field things wouldn't matter. But since he flopped on the field, the off the field things are exaggerated or exasperated, maybe the better word. Again, we talked about it in the first hour. Of course, Monday night at AT&T Stadium there in Arlington, Texas. Oregon takes on Ohio State. The number 2 seed versus the number 3 or 4 seed here. A very interesting matchup. Both very high-powered offenses. It'll be the defenses maybe which one can slow the other down. You couldn't help but watch that Oregon-Florida State game and see, just what Oregon is capable of. But Ohio State really snuck into the playoff, but beating Alabama, the number 1 seed, the way they did, I think opened up a lot of people's eyes. How do you see this one coming out?
Coming into it, I really thought that Ohio State had a good chance against Alabama. I thought they were a lot more athletic and faster than people give them credit for. We see a lot of these SEC games. You don't really get to watch a lot of your Big Ten games. As somebody, I've said it before, I like to watch Ohio State. I root for them. So I've seen them play several times this year, and I thought that they could compete with Alabama. Going into this game, I think it's 2 things that you look at. You look at the coaching, and then you look at the quarterback play. I think that Mariota has a step above Jones, but from the coaching perspective, I'd take Urban Meyer over Helfrich. So if you're looking at that, I really think in big-time games, this is what you would be looking for. But Ohio State's defense is going for the Heisman trifecta. You got Gordon, you got Cooper, and now you have Mariota. So they've been tested. Randy alluded to the secondary and how well and athletic they are. So, again, there's somebody who held Melvin Gordon under 100 yards. So I think from a physicality standpoint, they're there, and they're fast enough. They showed that against Alabama. So off the top, I would say Ohio State should have a good chance to win it. I think Ezekiel Elliott is going to be his show. I think he could easily go for 150 plus. So it's just going to be one of those things where I don't think either that it's going to be as high scoring as everybody thinks. I'm thinking something like 34-24 Ohio State. Randy talked about it, and you guys talked about it. 2010, everybody thought it'd be something where everybody had to be in the 40s. Didn't go that way, 22-19. So I look for Urban and Jones to really get things going in the ground game, and see Ohio State something 34-24, something like that.
Yeah, well, I talked to my point to Randy was, and I'm glad this is not the way it was. A 40-day layoff. Back in 2010, I'm glad that's gone. I think both teams come in, fresh, and you don't see the rust that you normally see in this championship game, even since the inception of the BCS. So. Even going back, I guess, even before the BCS, but I'm glad to see that. I think it'll be interesting. There'll definitely be some nerves, obviously, and maybe some lost opportunities, some lost possessions. But if Ohio State holds Oregon under 30 or 31 points, I'll be surprised. I'll be surprised.
I mean, and I know on paper, there's no way you could look at it, but defensively, you're looking at Ohio State. Total defense 17 in the country, Oregon 86 in the country. So I really like the fact that Ohio State can play defense, and that's what matters in this type of game. And you talk about nerves. If you look at some of the early games or early parts of games that Oregon has played, there's been some erratic play there for Mariota early on in games. So if Ohio State's able to jump out early on them and kind of get on top of them and force them to have to pass the ball to beat them, because Oregon does have a formidable running game. So if you put it into something where Mariota has to pass the ball, which I think goes back to his NFL status, what happens if he isn't able to run around the sides and do anything? Because there's such a big difference in the Pac-12 defense and the NFL defense. Now, we've seen somebody like Aaron Rodgers, who was an established quarterback, be able to make it that way, but I'm not sure that somebody of his skill set, Mariota, can translate that again. But going back to the national championship game, I really think that Ohio State has it, or Urban Meyer is as confident as he's ever been. He has that grin back that he had at Florida. So, and on another topic, I'm in this group chat, iMessage thing, a group of my friends were always talking about it. We had a big debate about Urban Meyer versus Nick Saban and who belonged where. And I want to get your thoughts on where you think they are comparable to each other.
Oh, well, that's a good point. I think they're on pretty equal footing, to be honest with you. What Urban Meyer did, people. Florida was not depleted. They were. Ron Zook had done a good job to recruit there at Florida, so he didn't have to come in and change the whole culture. But I think what he took that talent and did at Florida, winning 2 national championships in 3 years, was incredibly impressive. But what he's done at Ohio State, I think, is even more impressive, because they were not loaded like Florida was, and he's been able to do that in a very short amount of time to be able to come in. And you watch him do, what he did at Utah, and he's obviously one of the best coaches in college football. I don't think there's any doubt about that. So, as far as consistency, I'm not sure anybody right now compares with Nick Saban, because 7 years with double-digit wins, that's just incredible. But to me, I think right now maybe Saban is 1A and Myers 1B. I think they're on that equal of footing.
Yeah, and I think you're exactly right. There's such a great comparison. And if Urban Meyer is able to get this championship, I definitely think that elevates him into that. But we'll go ahead and go to the phone lines. I think we have Jim. Thanks for joining Sports Call.
Hey, fellas. How y'all doing?
Doing great, Jim. How about you?
I'm doing good. Look, I want to chime in on the Mariota-Winston situation. First of all, I would pick Mariota. But then I want you fellas to make a couple of comparisons for me, and I'll present the scenario, and then I'll hang up and listen to you talk. First of all, I see a little Roger Staubach in Mariota, and so I'd like for y'all to kind of compare talent-wise, character-wise, and so forth, Roger Staubach and Mariota. The other on Winston, I think of Ryan Leaf. So y'all compare his skills and his character, and see where we come out. And I hope y'all are old enough to remember Staubach. And I know the NFL game has changed some, but I know he was highly successful. Anyway, I'll let you guys have it at that.
Thank you for the call, Jim. Yeah, I'm not old enough to remember vividly watching Roger Staubach. I know who he is, obviously. Got his autograph, I think, when he came to the Pop Warner Parade in Alexander City many, many, many moons ago. But, I think character-wise, that's a good comparison. Roger Staubach, obviously, a military man. Nobody ever questioned his leadership ability, his heart. Very talented as well. Ryan Leaf and Jameis Winston, I don't think there's any comparison as far as skill level. But off the field issues, I hope Winston's not as crazy as Ryan Leaf. But I guess there is a possibility that there is. I tell you what, Scott, I'm going to get your thoughts on that as well. We're going to go ahead and take our first break here at the second hour. But don't go anywhere. We'll continue this discussion and take your phone calls when we come back. More Sports Call presented by Always Money right after this. Welcome back, everyone, to Sports Call on this Thursday afternoon. Andy and Scott here with you, taking you up to 6 o'clock, taking your phone calls at 1-888-9-TIGER-9 toll-free or locally at 334-887-3401 on the AO Tourism Hotline. Again, going back to the comparison of Ryan Leaf and Jameis Winston, obviously Ryan Leaf had a big problem with anger, and that was a big deal for him. Winston has not really, I guess, exhibited that, although he got involved in, I think, in an assault as well. I don't know if it was on a female. It seemed like it was on a male as well. He ended up selling drugs somewhere across, I don't know, in the Midwest. But I think he's clinically insane, Ryan Leaf. I'm not sure that can be said yet of Jameis Winston. He just seems like a knucklehead up to this point. And obviously there is the seriousness, though, of the charges that were brought against him. However, that was never proven to be the case. So, you have one that's proven, one that is still, I guess, subject to, your own interpretation. But, I don't see that a comparison right now. But, 2 or 3 years from now, who knows? We may look back and say, wow, I'll remember that call. I don't know. What about you, Scott?
Well, I don't know. I don't really know enough about Roger Staubach. We were talking about it. I know about him, seen film on him, but I remember Ryan Leaf and if it was going to be Ryan Leaf or Peyton Manning. And luckily for the Colts, good gracious, they went with Peyton Manning. But you look at somebody like Ryan Leaf and you look at Winston. Now, granted, as you said, there was the seriousness of what his charges and allegations were, but as you said, he was never found guilty of that. So that can not really be held, I guess, in your interpretation of him when you're grading him out. But some of the other things indicates a lack of maturity, and that is something that you do want to look at if you're going to invest money into a starting quarterback. I think that's what really separates your guys from maybe an RG3 and a Russell Wilson. You can just tell how they've gone about it, and I think it's where you are drafted and who the people and personnel that you have around you. So a lot of it has to do with, and I really would prefer if he didn't even go to Tampa, because I think he needs to get as far away from anything in the state of Florida as possible to get a fresh start, which I think is something that he definitely needs. And as much as I know Winston catches it, and I'm not an apologist for him or anything, I think he's extremely talented. But a lot of this has to go back to Florida State, too. I'm a strong believer in that he's a product of his environment. They allowed this to happen. And so when you allow things to happen like this, when it comes to the light, you can't expect any different outcome. So I think they were part of the problem. Tallahassee Police, where everything was encompassed with Tallahassee, had a lot to do with this. So in comparisons, I don't know necessarily on a skill set level, but from a crazy level, yes, Ryan Leaf definitely gets the nod there.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Well, it depends on, like you said, a lot of it depends on where you end up going. You look at the top 5 picks: the Buccaneers, the Titans, the Jaguars, the Raiders, and the Redskins and Jets. That's the first 6 picks. None of those places really is attractive at this point. Of course, that's the way the NFL works. If you're a high draft pick, you're obviously a terrible team. So, but speaking of the NFL, we'll kind of talk a little bit about the NFL playoffs. Really haven't done that much this week. Of course, the second round Saturday kicks off at 3:35 p.m. there on Saturday. Baltimore versus New England. Can Baltimore really do it again? It just seems like every time you count them out, they sneak into the playoffs, and then all of a sudden, when they're in the playoffs, they play like gangbusters. Their defense starts crushing people again, and Joe Flacco starts making the dynamic throws that you know that he can make, but it seems like he fails to do in the regular season.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's really Joe Flacco. He puts up pedestrian numbers, and he doesn't look that great in the regular season, but immediately he cuts it on in the playoffs, which is why they paid him the money and which is why he was able to make it to the Super Bowl. But I don't think it's going to be the case this time. I know that the Ravens have had success against New England, especially in New England, but again, it's Belichick and Brady. When it comes to B&B, I'll take them above anybody else. And I really think that the way that the Patriots have been playing of late, you have to rule out the Week 17 game against Buffalo. It didn't really matter. But outside of that, they've been playing as good or better than anybody else in the NFL. And I don't see that stopping. The defense, in particular, the secondary for the Ravens isn't that great. They continue to lose people every game. Somebody's gotten hurt. So I think they'll be able to exploit them with their offense. And Belichick has done a great job, kind of like Saban when he has time. 2 weeks to prepare for somebody. They're coming off a bye. I think that they'll do great coming against Baltimore.
I agree with you, but if Baltimore pulls the upset, pencil them into the Super Bowl.
Super Bowl, yes. Yeah.
Well, Saturday, the late game Saturday there, Carolina traveling to Seattle. Carolina played them earlier in the year at home, lost 13-9, so it was a very competitive game. Any chance that Carolina goes out there to Seattle and pulls the upset?
I don't think that they're going to win the game, but I could see it being something like that again, maybe a 20-13, 2016 game. The type of offense that the Patriots run, it correlates to success when you play a team like Seattle. They have a great secondary, but they play a lot of zone, so you can exploit that some. When you have a player like Cam, this is actually a game where Cam could play well in this one. I think his skill set is tailored to this. Jonathan Stewart has continued to play a lot better, but it's really just going to be how the defense of the Panthers is able to stop Russell Wilson and Marshawn Lynch and the attack that they've been having. Russell Wilson, I think, is by far one of your guys that you're going to look for next year. Could be an MVP caliber guy going forward. I really like him as a top 3-4 quarterback for the next 10 or so years. He's in that next class of guys. I think Seattle got a gem in him. I wish Auburn had a chance to get him in 2011, but I think that you see Carolina go out, I'd see maybe 2014, 2016, somewhere like that.
On Sunday, the early game, Dallas traveling to Green Bay, as we mentioned earlier. Aaron Rodgers, it was revealed today that he not only has a strained calf, but there's a slight tear in that calf as well. He says he will play. Doesn't really know how he's going to play, but he's going to play. Dallas undefeated on the road this year. Road Warriors. They get a benefit of a call, no doubt, against the Detroit Lions last week, but Dallas going on the road, frigid temperatures there in Lambeau Field. This one, I don't know. If Aaron Rodgers is not 100%, I might go with the Cowboys.
I picked the Packers and Patriots to win the Super Bowl before the season started, so I have to stick with that. But the way the Cowboys have been playing behind DeMarco Murray in that offensive line, the elevated play of Tony Romo and Dez Bryant and even Jason Witten now getting back to his similar Pro Bowl form, they've been playing great. But the Packers do have Aaron Rodgers. So if a healthy Aaron Rodgers, or 80% Aaron Rodgers, I'll still put him above almost every other quarterback in the league. I think this is the most intriguing playoff matchup just based on because Dallas hadn't had this chance to have this much success in a while. So if they're able to get Tony Romo going early, I really think they have a chance to win it. But it's in Green Bay. It's going to be tough, but I really like the Cowboys in that game, maybe 27-21 Cowboys.
The late game Sunday, Indianapolis traveling to Denver. Andrew Luck versus Peyton Manning.
This is the one that everybody always looks at when they play each other in the playoffs because did you make the right decision over Andrew Luck or Peyton Manning there, keeping him? But I think that the Colts really may have it together. I think that the lure of the Broncos and Peyton Manning, I really think that it's going down. They've changed their offensive scheme tremendously, and I think it's somewhat to offset his inability to get some power behind his throws. It's really been down. If you look at the last 46 games for the Broncos, the passing numbers are down, more rushing attempts, but they have been winning games, so they found a formula for success. But I think that this is a game where Andrew Luck has his coming out party as a playoff quarterback, and they defeat the Broncos. So that's my upset pick for the 4 games there.
I like that one as well. Denver defeating Indianapolis earlier in the year 31-24, although I think Denver was up maybe 24-0 in that game, and Indianapolis came storming back. So that'll be an interesting one as well. Up against a break here. Hopefully when we come back, we'll catch up with Brian Matthews from auburnsports.com. Be sure to join us on the other side of this break. More Sports Call presented by Auburn Urgent Care right after this.
You always there when you need us.
Auburn Links is your home for great golf. Just off exit 51, Auburn Links features a beautiful layout with Bermuda grass greens and rolling fairways, all right next to Parkinson's Mill Creek. For the last 20 years, Auburn Links has been providing Lee County with the best golfing experience around whatever your skill level may be. Looking for a fun family activity? Auburn Links has great group rates and membership specials for everyone, and their weekday rates now include Fridays. Be sure to follow Auburn Links on Facebook and Twitter for special deals and limited time offers. Auburn Links on Shell Tumor Parkway. Call 887-5151.
This segment of Sports Call is brought to you by Dr. Pepper. Here's to a one-of-a-kind Dr. Pepper. Dr. Pepper is a proud sponsor of the College Football Playoff. Dr. Pepper, always one of a kind.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Thursday edition of Sports Call. Andy Graham here with you for another 30 minutes or so, taking your phone calls at 1-888-9-TIGER-9, toll-free, or locally at 334-887-3401 on the AO Tourism Hotline. We'll actually pick up your phone calls in the final segment of today's show. Right now, we're going to go to the AO Tourism Hotline and welcome in our good friend Brian Matthews from auburnsports.com. Brian, how are you today?
Oh, I'm doing terrific. Good to be back in with you guys.
It's good to be back with you as well. I hope you're keeping warm.
Yes, I am.
Well, I got a couple of questions for you from some of the callers out there on Sports Call the last couple of days. One specifically wanted me to ask you. He had gotten some information, of course. Alex Kozan with the back injury had surgery and missed all of last year, but been some conflicting reports, maybe of, or at least rumor and innuendo out there about his recovery and his rehabilitation. Maybe this particular caller thought that some information that came from J.G. Tate might have indicated that it was still up in the air whether Alex Kozan would even play football again. So I just wanted to ask you specifically, have you heard anything or can you shed any light on that?
Well, I don't think any decisions have been made or anything like that. I just the surgery he had was pretty serious, and I think the recovery and rehab from that just takes a while. So I think he's going through that process right now. I do not expect him to be full speed or be ready for full contact in spring. And I think everybody will just see where he stands later this summer and going into fall. So I just think that's something to keep an eye on. I wouldn't say anything definitive one way or the other with Alex football. Right now he's rehabbing and he wants to return to playing football, and I'm sure Auburn would love to have him back too.
The second question from one of our callers was that, of course, with staff changes going on, especially on the defensive side of the ball, it's still up in the air, I guess, if there's going to be any more staff changes. Obviously, Auburn will probably hire someone, but, Rodney Garner is a name that people, there's some question out there, maybe, will he be back? Should he be back? One caller asked, what's the chances that Auburn could lure Tracy Rocker back to Auburn?
Yeah, I don't foresee that happening at all, and I expect Rodney Garner to stay where he's at right now as Auburn's defensive line coach. I do think that Auburn is going to hire a safeties coach here, and it could happen over the weekend. The coaches convention I think is in Louisville this year, and I expect Coach Malzahn to be up there and perhaps interview some candidates, and him and Coach Muschamp, I guess more so Coach Muschamp will be ultimately, not ultimately, but will be sort of making a decision, picking his guy to come in there and coach safeties. So I think that's something that could get done over the weekend, and we could have something, by early next week as far as that goes.
Well, Brian, as we kind of turn the page, it's 2015 now. Of course, signing day will be in February, and we'll all be looking forward to what happens to Auburn and what they're going to look like. But just your final thoughts looking back on this 2014 season.
Man, that's a good question. I would say it was a little bit disappointing as far as Auburn not, I think living up to its potential, especially on the defensive side of the ball. I think, overall, if you look at the numbers, the production and offense, it was good enough to be competitive at the top of the SEC and in the top five nationally. But I felt like the defense really let Auburn down this year. I think not having that pass rusher was a big issue, but some guys up front and on the defensive line didn't play as well as I thought they would. And, I think there were certainly some issues in coverage too. back in that secondary. So I think that's an area that is going to get. It'll be interesting to see how quickly Will and his new staff can turn that defense around. I think it'll be a very exciting spring. I think Will's going to bring a lot of energy to that side of the ball, which we didn't see enough of, I think, over the last year. And I think you're going to see those guys really respond to his coaching. He's one of those players, coaches, and players really want to play for him. So it's going to be fun to watch this spring and going into the summer and fall.
We got Brian Matthews from AuburnSports.com joining us here on Sports Call this afternoon. When you look and you see, who all Auburn has coming back, you keep up, obviously, with recruiting so much. You see the potential of what Auburn has coming in the coming class. Where do you see the potential maybe for the biggest improvement for this Auburn team in 2015?
I would say the defensive line, I think, has definitely the biggest area of improvement. First of all, you get maybe your best player back on defense in Carl Lawson. If he is healthy and can return to what you would expect from him, he can be a difference maker, especially playing that new buck position that he'll be playing in the Muschamp, which will be a hybrid defensive end outside linebacker, depending on if Auburn's in a 4-3 or backs out to a 3-4 type of look, in which they're going to do a lot of switching up with Muschamp in charge. And I think at defensive tackle, there's some young guys on this team that have a chance to sort of step up and maybe make a pretty early and impressive impression. One of those guys, Tavius Russell, redshirted, and going to be a really good player. This will be his big opportunity to show out. And on Travius Adams, if he can have a really good offseason, he has a chance. I mean, he can take his level, his game up a couple of steps. He has a chance to have a great junior season and maybe help himself out as we look toward the 2016 NFL draft. But he's got to get it done off the field and on the practice fields first, and then take that to the playing field.
Well, Brian, recruiting has kind of picked up, especially since Will Muschamp was hired. Then you bring in Travaris Robinson, and it even picks up that much more guys looking at Auburn maybe that weren't before. When you talk about names like Byron Coward and a guy like Arden Key, who just decommitted from South Carolina and looks like he's going to be visiting Auburn maybe the last weekend before. But, names like C.C. Jefferson and I think Ivan Marshall, a guy that number one cornerback in the country. What percentage or maybe how realistic is it, do you think, that Auburn can sign some of these guys?
Well, they're going to end up surprising and getting some of those guys. It's hard to say who or what or how it's going to happen, but that's just the nature of recruiting. You get those guys to visit. Auburn's a great place, a top SEC school. I think a guy, especially like Byron Coward, I've met him, interviewed him. I just think he's going to fit in really well when he actually comes to the school and spends time with the coaching staff and the players. So we'll see. Right now, all those guys, Auburn, a lot of them haven't been to Auburn. They weren't here this fall for games and such, but this will be the big opportunity to impress them. And you got guys on the staff like Travaris Robinson, Will Muschamp, Damian Craig, Tim Horton, Rodney Garner. Those guys are really, really good recruiters, and they'll make a big impression on these guys. I think it's going to be a really exciting last few weeks of recruiting, starting with that big visit weekend on January 16th. You're talking about probably the biggest recruiting weekend Auburn's had since Big Cat Weekend.
Well, certainly looking forward to that. That could turn this class certainly from a good one into a great one. As we move forward to Monday night, obviously Oregon taking on Ohio State, the culmination of this season, the first ever college football playoff championship game. Who do you like in this game? How do you see this game turning out?
Well, I'm gonna be pulling for the Ducks. Not a big fan of Urban Meyer, but I like Oregon to win also. I just think Marcus Mariota is a special player, and Oregon looks like the team that's really ready to win this thing. But I think it could end up being a really great and exciting game, just the way both teams are built. You would expect to see a pretty good dose of offense, and I love the new playoff, and would like to see it expand to eight teams eventually. But I think it's great, that they've taken their step forward, and really looking forward to Monday night, just sitting back and enjoying a great college football game. I mean, I love the sport of college football much more than the NFL, and I think it's going to be a terrific final night of the 2014 season.
Any particular reason why you don't like Urban Meyer?
Well, just, you sort of hear things on the SEC for 12 years about some of the stuff that went on in Florida. And, he didn't leave Will in a very good shape. I know Florida had a lot of success under him, but by the time he left, that program was in a lot of issues, talent-wise. They had a lot of guys that weren't really into going to class and doing the right thing on and off the field. So I think, that put Will in a really tough place for his first couple of years there. So just not a big fan of Urban and the way he runs his program.
I don't really think you're alone there. Brian Matthews, just let us know what's going on at auburnsports.com right now.
Well, thank you so much. And, of course, we've had a lot of coverage of, all this new recruiting news, the new guys getting offered and coming in for the big visit weekend. And, of course, the basketball team, I thought they played really well in the second half up there against Vanderbilt. They'll be home this weekend for a big game. And we'll have a big war room tomorrow. We're working on that right now and had a nice podcast today. So there's a whole lot going on right now at auburnsports.com.
Brian Matthews does a fantastic job covering all Auburn athletics. Be sure to go and check out auburnsports.com. Brian, we thank you so much for joining us each and every Thursday afternoon.
Hey, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. We'll be back with one final segment on the Thursday Sports Call right after this.
Remarketing Group is proud to announce their recent alliance with Baker Street Advertising based in Opelika, Alabama. Now more than ever, it's important to develop a marketing plan.
School and college athletics rule the state of Alabama. Increase exposure for your business by spending your advertising dollars on the best sports programming in Alabama with Sports Blitz, Sportscall, and the AHSAA radio network. In a sports-hungry state like Alabama, Sports Blitz, Sportscall, and the AHSAA radio network will offer your business the best return on investment. We have packages designed to fit any budget. Call today 256-794-8223.
Let me tell you about Satterfields. Check out the beautiful showroom at Satterfields on Highway 280 in Alexander City. They have a great selection of outdoor grilling lines for your entertainment needs. Name brands like Big Green Egg, Lynx, Blaze, and Saber are just a few. Also, Loan Equipment by Shindawa, Echo, and Husqvarna. Power Tools by Makita, and a great line of Carhartt clothing. All of this in one location. Satterfields on Highway 280 in Alexander City. Stop by and visit them today. Satterfield.
Auburn Urgent Care, located on South College in Auburn and on Enterprise Drive in Opelika near Tigertown, offers convenient solutions to your healthcare and occupational medicine needs. We offer workman's compensation injury care, and we have a certified DOT medical examiner on staff. And we're open 7 days a week to best serve you. Call us today at 334-821-3221. It's not about speed, it's about the quality of care. Auburn Urgent Care.
This segment of Sports Call is brought to you by Resource Natural Spring Water. Resource is 100% natural spring water with naturally occurring electrolytes that support a lifestyle of well-being. When you need to refresh, revitalize, and replenish, it's always Resource Natural Spring Water.
Welcome back, everyone, to the final segment of the Thursday Sports Call. Andy Graham and Scott Hardy here, taking you home to 6 o'clock. Taking your phone call. Still time to get that last one in. 1-888-9-TIGER-9 toll-free locally at 334-887-3401 on the AO Tourism hotline. Just caught up with Brian Matthews. Had a lot of good, interesting things to say. Though, as far as Shadow is concerned, to his question about Tracy Rocker, I don't think it's not going to happen as far as the insiders are concerned. Rodney Garner will be back. At least that's what the feeling is across campus. It certainly surprises do happen, but if you're putting any hope in that, I think you might want to put that to rest.
Yeah, and I think during the stretch there when he was at Auburn, I think he was, outside of Gus, the most influential coach that was on the staff. I think you could tell once he left, there was just a certain discipline kind of that left with him. And I know that Garner and Rocker, a lot of people equate to them because they're both great recruiters and both were Auburn men per se, but it wasn't the same after Rocker's left. And I think that is somebody that definitely Auburn could use, but Georgia's using it to their advantage right now. And so good for them. But I'm convinced now that whatever Muschamp, you just got to go with whatever's going on right now. And I'm sure they'll make whatever changes are necessary.
Yeah, and DJ Durkin, it was announced that he is going to Michigan. I think he was maybe did he do defensive line at Florida?
I believe so.
I think he did. Yeah. So, but he's the DC now at Michigan. I think he was on the staff at Stanford when Harbaugh was out there as well. So, kind of putting the old band back together there in Michigan. Didn't get your thoughts on Michigan, but. What do you think about Harbaugh going to Michigan?
I think that it's an outstanding hire. I don't think that they could have done any. Well, they're one of the few places where that was the only guy that they could have hired. I think that where that was going to change it. Michigan is no longer what Michigan used to be, but when you bring in somebody of his caliber and his pedigree as a coach and player and Michigan native, then I think that he definitely brings back more credibility to the program. But I think we'll go back to the phone lines here, and Andy will bring in Shadow. Shadow, thanks for joining Sports Call.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yeah, thank you for taking my call. I did not get to hear some of the conversation. Did he say that he had an idea on who they were interested in at the safety position, safety coaching?
He did not give a specific name. All he said was he thought that could happen over the weekend. The coaching conference, being I think this weekend. Said being in Louisville, he said a lot of times it happens after that. So that could happen over the weekend.
Well, hey, I want to thank y'all for asking my questions. And I know it seems I've been harping on this, but this is a major decision, and whoever Auburn goes with, we're going to support him. But this kind of thing doesn't happen every year. It's probably going to be 3 years before we address this again. And I just I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Shad. I don't think you're alone. I think, Scott just said, I think everybody feels pretty much the same way that Tracy Rocker was a fantastic defensive line coach. It's hard to argue with the production that he put on the field, in a soft defense. Auburn, as Randy said, I think, we were not a good defense in 2010, but we could stop the run. Our defensive line was impactful. They just played different. Now, was it the players? We had some good players come through that time. It's not maybe once a decade Nick Flaherty comes through your program. So, but I think you have to give credit, a lot of it, to Tracy Rocker. And, hopefully we'll see that production again. Again, Garner's only been here this only second year. So you would hope that maybe the younger guys like an Andrew Williams, like a Justin Thornton, like a Richie Kenyon, like a Dontavius Russell, like a Montravius Adams, he and Carl Lawson produce and get better in their junior years? I think give him a chance.
Yeah, and I'm with you there. Again, Garner, this is only a second year rather with Auburn, so you look for some progression here. But I do think that the caliber, although Nick Fairley, as you said, is a once-a-decade type of player, but as a whole, the way that defensive line was recruited compared to this defensive line that Auburn had that he coached, I think from a four-star, five-star recruiting level, this was an outmatched team or the 2010 team would have been outmatched. They had a lot of names, but Fairley really carried it for him. So I don't know. I really think that there's more to it from a defensive line perspective than the coach. I mean, more than just coaching. There's a lot more that goes into it. But if they're able to get great secondary play, I think that's really going to be the main thing. That'll take some of the pressure off of them having to blitz so much. If they can play lockdown coverage, which is what I think he wants to do, but he'll keep it within the personnel. If Muschamp's able to do that, I think you'll see a turnaround defense.
Scott, I remember, I'm old enough to remember, I don't know if you are, when the Knicks actually had a basketball program. Well, I don't know if you remember when Pat Riley was there in 1994, and they went to the NBA
Jeff
Finals.
Gundy in the heat there, the grabbing of the ankle there of Alonzo Mourning. So I do remember that. But, yeah, the Knicks used to really be a quality team, and they sold it, and they continue to sell out Madison Square Garden somehow. But there is a train wreck happening in New York City right now, and I don't know if it's going to stop anytime soon. I feel so badly for Derek Fisher. They brought him in there, and I know we're up against him in the show, but what a disaster for your first coaching job to be, and now it's going to end in the way it's going to because they're not going to be good.
Ugly. Sports Call back on the air tomorrow from 4 to 6. For Randy Lee, Scott Hardy, I'm Andy Graham saying so long for now. We'll talk again soon.